Podcasters, assemble!
Hi everyone, this is Becky, Troy's wife.
Hi, I'm Jason, representing Drinkopedia Podcast.
Hey everyone, it's Rob here, your friendly neighborhood comic geek.
This is Troytle Power from the Power Playthroughs podcast.
Hi, this is Arjuna Gonzalez from Thoughts from the Level Editor.
And this is...
Iron Man 2.
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 This is an adaptation of the famous Demons in a Bottle storyline. For those who are only fans of the MCU or not aware of like the comics, Demons in a Bottle was a famous storyline within Iron Man's publication where he dealt with addiction and kind of tried to overcome his like alcohol addiction and what that really meant for him as an individual and him as a hero going forward. And it was really seminal in the time of comics too, because at the time, comics don't talk about alcohol. They don't talk about drugs. They don't talk about sex, you know? And I think this was an attempt at it. And I like respect that, I guess. It's not the best attempt, but I definitely respect that they're hitting that with Tony Stark.
The scene starts with Tony Stark at the Tony Stark Expo or Iron Man Expo. And there's people everywhere. It's like he's famous. There's paparazzi and there's people asking for his autographs. And he's like trying to fight his way through the crowd, just, like a celebrity would be. And then he's walking out the door and this man turns around, like standing in the middle of a empty area. And the man turns around and he goes, "Oh, hey, Larry." And it's Stanley, and Stanley is like wearing a red button-up shirt and suspenders, and he's super cute. He doesn't say anything, but yeah, so that's Stanley's moment in Iron Man 2.
Tony Stark's big drive in this movie is that he has privatized world peace. He sees himself as the guaranteed peacekeeper for the planet and is set on making sure no one else gets technology similar to his Iron Man technology.
This film is okay, but I think it really ran into script issues and how they were trying to deal with the demon in the bottle storyline where Tony Stark becomes an alcoholic, but they don't really give it all the attention that they needed to because they also want to run off and also do sort of their version of the Armor Wars storyline, where Tony Stark is going around the world and trying to take away his technology from all these other people that are misusing it.
There's some discussion about other countries that are trying to create that sort of technology, and basically it's just not working for anybody else. The main person we get to know who's rivaling him, or at least trying to rival him in this regard, is Justin Hammer.
I think the main villain is Mickey Rourke as Whiplash. He's fine. The better villain in this movie is Justin Hammer, played by Sam Rockwell, who, if you don't know, Sam Rockwell, fantastic actor, nails just this idiot kind of poor man's version of Tony Stark. Fantastic. Love Sam Rockwell.
We meet Justin Hammer in that scene. We also get reintroduced to Rhodey. One of my favorite lines in the movie is when Rhodey walks in, shot from behind, and then he turns and we get to see it's Don Cheadle in the role. We've lost Terrence Howard, but we've gained a Don Cheadle, and he says, "Yeah, it's me. I'm here. Get over it." I don't have that line written down in front of me, but I think that might be exactly what it is. It's a really nice moment because it's an acknowledgement to the fans that the actor has changed in a way that does not at all break the fourth wall. I mean, I guess it kind of breaks the fourth wall, but it feels natural in that scene. If you didn't know why that line was funny, it's just a totally appropriate line for that scene.
There's also this thing of him saying that he's privatized world peace, and so there's this whole idea of him basically being kind of a terrorist, right? Like, he's not sanctioned by any government, but he's going around killing people because we know Iron Man kills people, and so that gives me pause.
My favorite line of dialogue is probably as Tony Stark is walking out of the Senate Armed Services Committee hearing, and he says, "I will serve this great nation at the pleasure of myself. And if there's one thing I've proven, it's that you can count on me to pleasure myself." I got a laugh out of that. It's good.
Meanwhile, in Russia, there's a guy. He's really mad at Stark. We don't really know why. This is Whiplash. He's an inventor. He's the son of an inventor or a scientist of some sort. You know how comic book scientists be. If you're a scientist, you're just good at everything. But basically, his dad used to work with Howard Stark. He got kind of kicked off the project, and now he's looking for revenge. So he builds himself his own little arc reactor, and uses it to make big electrified whips, I guess.
My favorite villain moment is definitely the Elon Musk cameo. Just kidding.
So Whiplash finally confronts Tony Stark in Monaco, at the big race that happens there. The way he confronts him is by walking out onto the track and using his whips to just start ripping cars apart. I've seen some criticism levied at this scene where basically people are like, how did he know Tony was going to be driving the car? But honestly, I don't think he has to know that. His goal is to confront Iron Man. He knows Tony Stark's going to be at the race, so he's going to go just mess stuff up and assume that Iron Man's going to join the fray. Pepper Potts and Happy Hogan get a lot to do in this scene. They actually hop in a car and are driving Tony's Iron Man suit out to the track. It's nice to get to see them get involved. I really like both characters. They're never the standouts for me, but they're both just a lot of fun. So it was cool to see them get to drive out onto the track.
For most people, Iron Man 2, the whole film can be summed up in the scene where he has the suitcase suit, and that whole scene where he puts on the Iron Man armor out of the suitcase, which is also straight out of the comic books. And yes, I have to give it to them that is also wonderful.
Ultimately, of course, Iron Man suits up and throws down with Whiplash. And he wins, and they arrest Whiplash, but Iron Man kind of takes a beating in the process. And afterwards, we find out that was basically Whiplash's goal. He knew he wasn't going to beat Iron Man. He just wanted to make him bleed.
Tony is talking to Ivan, and Ivan says, "If you can make God bleed, then people will cease to believe in him. And there will be blood in the water, and the sharks will come. In truth, all I have to do is sit here and watch the world consume you." This is Ben. Arjuna tries to do a Russian accent. Thank you all for playing. This movie does a generally good job of introducing Ivan as a villain and giving us his backstory, but that one line of dialogue is really good at driving home the point that just because Tony Stark has this amazing high-tech suit doesn't mean that other people aren't trying to figure out how to make the same thing and take him down a notch.
So he thinks he's won at this point. Whiplash is done. That's one of the things that's weird about this movie. He's done. He's accomplished what he set out to do with the scene in Monaco. That's it. Mission accomplished.
My favorite action scene is probably the fight between Rhodey and Tony Stark at his mansion, where they both have the suits on, and especially the part where they're both, like, I guess fist fighting, and Robot Rock by Daft Punk is playing in the background. I'm gonna get to this later, but while that fight sequence maybe doesn't have the best CG and VFX stuff going on as, say, the last battle sequence in the movie. It stands above the rest of them because of the choice of soundtrack, in my opinion.
Now, this movie gets a really bad rap within the the overall MCU universe, because it was the first time they were trying to interconnect everything, and it was basically seen as like a teaser for Avengers. This movie is just a teaser for Avengers, but you got to give it props for introducing Nick Fury, introducing Black Widow, bringing back Coulson. He's part of Shield. That's world building. One of the movies we're gonna have to take a hit, and it just so happened to be this movie.
I think the most successful thing about Iron Man 2 is its connections to the larger Marvel universe. Nick Fury was first introduced in that end credit scene back in the first Iron Man movie, but this is where we really get to know him as an actual character. And on top of that, we get more of Coulson, and we get more of Natasha Romanoff, and then we even get like little threads connecting to the next movie, Thor, when Coulson talks about getting reassigned to the Southwest. So it's really cool that it's doing a lot to establish that larger world. That's I think where this movie is most successful.
Tony Stark is sitting in the Randy's Donuts statue, the giant donut on top of the donut store, and Nick Fury walks up and says, "Sir, I'm gonna have to ask you to exit the donut."
So Justin Hammer has been kind of introduced earlier in the movie as slimy, but he's so mad at Tony, and he really wants to get a leg up on him. So he ends up breaking Whiplash out of jail and bringing him over to work for him. He's got some suits, but they don't work properly. So he hires Whiplash on to basically rewrite the software for the suits, I think is the plan. Instead, Whiplash puts a drone head on the suit and says that drones are better. There's a great little sequence here of Justin Hammer being a terrible version of Tony Stark, where he's got the drone head and he's like, "What's this? This isn't a helmet. I can't fit my head in this." And he turns to his assistant. He's like, "Can you fit your head in this? Try and fit your head in this." And the guy's like, "No, I can't. It's dumb. It's funny, but it's like they do a really good job of like. Sam Rockwell is great at not succeeding at having Tony Stark's swagger, or at least not being charming while having that sort of swagger. He does a really good job with this role. Ultimately, those drones lead us into the big action scene at the end. Justin Hammer is presenting at the Stark Expo that's been going on in the background throughout the movie. And in his presentation, he has the drones pop up on stage. And in theory, what Whiplash told him is that they can just salute. That's all they can do, basically. It turns out that's not quite the case. They are actually fully armed, and they just start blasting up the place, shooting everything. Tony and War Machine show up. They work together to try to stop these drones, take them all out, and then of course we get Whiplash coming in, and they get an epic standoff against him at the end. Probably my favorite moment in this action scene is War Machine, who has an Iron Man suit that's been all kitted out with tech from Justin Hammer, fires this bunker buster missile that Justin Hammer talked about, how this was his Mona Lisa. It's the greatest thing he's ever made. All this stuff. He fires it at Whiplash, and it don't do nothing. It's a dud. It doesn't work because Justin Hammer is terrible.
My favorite action scene, and possibly one of my like top 10 favorite action scenes of the whole MCU. I think Iron Man 2 gets a bad rap, but the moment where Iron Man and War Machine are back to back in like the cherry blossom forest, and there's just a scene where they're like guns up, back to back, broing out, cherry blossoms anime scene. Ugh, fantastic. Love you, Jon Favreau. Beautiful shot.
My favorite hero moment in the movie, well, it's really my favorite heroine moment, is after Hammer's robots have gone crazy and they're behind the stage trying to shut them down, and Black Widow and Pepper come in, and Black Widow like grabs Hammer and like slams him into the table to find out that Ivan is at the Hammer Industries building, and Pepper comes in and calls the cops, and like it feels really good as like the culmination of this whole plot arc of Pepper kind of taking over from Tony Stark because he's probably dying from his arc reactor and all of that. And like as many good moments as Iron Man has in the movie, that one just stuck out more to me. Pepper isn't just his assistant who takes out his trash for him, as she said at the start of the first movie. She's running all of Stark Industries now.
During the big battle at the Stark Expo, Natasha and Happy Hogan go off on a side mission to find Whiplash to basically shut down the servers. And this this leads to another fun Happy driving scene. This time he's driving to get there to the servers at Hammer's facility. And while he's going, Natasha's changing in the back seat. She's been undercover as like a secretary this whole episode, or I guess she was something. Natalie, I think probably was her name, Natalie from Legal. And then Tony hires her to be like an assistant, and Pepper dislikes her and then learns to like her by the end. But it turns out she's Black Widow, so she changes into her like sleek, spy outfit in the back seat. And then they get there and bust inside, and Happy starts fighting this guy in the lobby, and she starts fighting another guy. And then there's this amazing long action scene of her beating up like 12 dudes, and it constantly cuts back to Happy dealing with his one guy. And it's weird because they're both clearly doing their best, and they're both succeeding, but the level of success is just so drastically different. And it ends with Happy being like, I got him, and then looking ahead, and there she is standing over like 12 unconscious people. It's really good.
I'm interested to hear the rest of Black Widow's backstory. I mean, she gets, some introduction. We don't really hear a whole lot of her backstory, and from watching the Avengers, I know that more of that, or at least it seems like more of that, is explained in Thor, because Loki has a whole bunch of lines talking about her background, and he says, Thor told me about this. So that'll be cool to find out.
Overall, I feel like if they wanted to really do the sort of demon in the bottle type of storyline, they could have almost combined it with Iron Man 3 in with some of his PTSD, which I know is better suited to following the Battle of New York. But I just feel like we didn't get as much out of it as we really wanted to.
This movie is kind of hard to pin down the details on. I think a lot of that comes from the script being a little vague. From what I've heard, it sounds like there was a lot of improv on this set. It sounds like it was probably a really fun movie to make, but I don't know. It just falls a little flat for me. I don't dislike it, really.
As for anything else, this movie has the best soundtrack of the MCU Phase 1 movies that I've seen so far. Like, it doesn't just have AC/DC, it has Daft Punk. Oh my god, yes. If your movie has Daft Punk and AC/DC in the soundtrack, I don't care how bad it is, I'm gonna watch it at least once. And if it had Modest Mouse in the soundtrack, I'd watch it 3 times.
This was Jon Favreau's last film as director on the Iron Man series. He started it all with Iron Man 1 as the director. He's Happy Hogan, for those not in the know. He acts and directs. He's a real double threat there. And I wish he could have more. Not a lot of people love this movie, but I love Jon Favreau as a director. And, I think he understands the Tony Stark character the most, with the exception of Robert Downey Jr., of course. And I love him and I miss him. I hope he comes back to direct another MCU movie soon.
Podcasters Assemble Probably is a production of the We Can Make This Work Probably podcast network. This episode edited and produced by me, Troytle Power. Find more of our shows at probablywork.com and learn how to contribute to future episodes of Podcasters Assemble Probably by looking us up on Twitter as @CastersAssemble. Submissions are always open. Thank you to everyone who was able to contribute to this episode. Be sure to check the show notes for links to all the places you can find them online.
Can you imagine Avengers Endgame with a Modest Mouse soundtrack? I mean, maybe it would just be like shit luck 2 or 3 times played throughout the movie, but...
Podcasters Assemble Probably will return in Thor. A bird? You want a bird? I can get you a bird. I can get you 10 birds. Nothing's impossible. Are we talking, is this bird back in Russia?